Hello, Cloud Animators, and welcome to this tutorial on the basics to the timeline. So I'll give you a basic introduction into timeline animation. So I'm going to show you how we can create a project like this that has different elements and how you can manage these elements inside the timeline. So let me go into my project here, and I will play this back. Play this project, and you can see that we have different items. We have cheese, we have this ice cream, and we have that tomato. So right now I have the timeline, which is this part at the bottom. This is in the basic mode or template mode, what we call. So it has very limited functions, where if the only time I can see a track is if I select a specific item, you'll notice that that track will appear. And if I click on another item, the previous track disappears and the new one will appear. Okay, so it's a very basic way of managing these tracks without getting confused. The problem is that in the basic mode, you cannot see the relationship between multiple tracks. So I cannot see the relationship between this cheese track and the ice cream track, and I don't know which one will appear first and whatnot, and which one will end later on. So to solve this, we simply toggle on the advanced mode. The advanced mode will basically give us a view, an overall view of all the time tracks that we have inside. So let me try to, oh, we're okay. Let me try to play this back. And you'll notice that we have different items here. So because this project contains a background, text, and everything else, so you can see that down here we have multiple tracks. But I'm going to go all the way down where I only want to work with, I don't only want to show these elements, cheese, ice cream, and tomato. So you'll notice down here that the only reason, the reason why this cheese icon appears first is because I've dictated that in the timeline, that's the first track that will come in contact with the time scrub. What is a time scrub? This little thing I'm dragging here, this is what's basically going to guide the time. So this moves sequentially per second, and everything that touches in the timeline, that's what's going to be appearing in your project. So I have the cheese track here, and I can see the length of my cheese item. This is how long my cheese item will appear in my project. Let me try to expand my project a bit. Let me grab this this edge, this range, and I will now drag the time scrub. So you'll see that at the very end, my cheese track ends. So that means that my item will disappear. And likewise with the ice cream and the tomato. Okay? So this is the advantage of working with the advanced mode. So what else? What else do we see in the timeline? Well, we'll see that we have also 3 different options. We have invisible, we have lock, and we have rename. So invisible basically allows you to toggle on and off the visibility of your item. I can turn that cheese on and off, and I can do the same for the ice cream and the tomato. Now take note that just because I have clicked on this, it doesn't mean we've deleted the item from the project. It's still there. It's just not visible. So another one is the lock feature. So the lock feature is very, very useful because it allows me to lock an item, and that way I don't make the mistake of accidentally grabbing one of these items. Now the tomato here does not have, let me bring this time scrub forward, the tomato does not have the lock, so I can freely grab this and move it about. But I can't do that with the ice cream because I have that lock on it. So once you start filling your project and you have multiple time tracks and you have multiple items, you might want to choose if you want to lock specific items. That way you don't accidentally grab them and add keyframes by accident. And I'm going to explain in a while what keyframes are. Let me finish up with this part here. So we have visibility, we have lock, and we have rename. So rename is very self-explanatory. It'll allow us to properly rename something. I can change the name. I can call it add 1, or I can call it add 2 cheese, or whatever I need. So the advantage of this is obviously if I have a lot of tracks, you want to properly label everything. That way you have a very organized way. Everything is labeled. You don't make mistakes. You know what is what, and it'll allow you to more efficiently manage your project. So let's go to the top here. What else do we have? We also have the track menu list. So if I toggle this on, this will allow me to see all my project elements in by category. I have, oh, I'm sorry. I have media, I have text, I have shapes, and I have images. So this is a very, very quick way to toggle on and off some of these tracks. Okay. The other option that I have is to show all tracks. I click on that and everything will be visible inside my timeline. So if you've missed something, you can toggle that on and you will be able to see everything inside. And then lastly, we have object related track. What does that mean? It means that the only track that will appear is the track that is the track for the item that I have selected. That's why it's called the object related track. If I click on an object, that is the only related track that will appear in the timeline. Okay, so it's sort of the same thing as we did in easy mode. Remember when we were in template mode at the very beginning, where if you select an item, that's the only track you will be able to see. Just remember to toggle that off if you do not wish to use that all the time. All right, so what else can I show you? I'm going to show you now how to add your own keys, how to add keyframes, which are these little dots here at the very beginning of each track. So I will go into a new slide here, and I'm going to select custom, and I'm going to add in an object. Let's see, I'll add the cheese again. So I can select that cheese, and immediately as soon as I drop that in, you'll see that the time track appeared, and we have a little dot at the very beginning. This is what we call a key, okay, a keyframe. Basically that little dot, that keyframe, will contain different values. It contains values on it contains values on the time, what time that object is appearing, but also the position of that object, along with the scale, how big the object is, the rotation, and also the opacity and the easing. So if we go to the right side here to image settings, you'll notice that I can, if I move my object around, the position will change. Also scale, I can choose what scale, 1:1, or I can increase that. Okay, and I can also play around with the rotation. I can say 90 degrees, and that'll rotate my object. So let me go back to the original one. I can also play around with the opacity. I can drop the opacity or I can increase the opacity. And lastly, we also have easing. Easing is basically another term for transition curve, which means what kind of motion will my keyframe have. So if I have my cheese moving from point A here, and then I grab, let's say, I grab my time scrub to the future to second 3, let's say, or second 2, just let's make it shorter. And then now if I touch my item here and I drag it and I let it go, you will see that a keyframe was added. So right now if I play this back, it'll go from A to B. And I could decide how I want that animation to play about, if I want it to go linear or if I want it to go with an acceleration at first and then a deceleration later. And this is all done by choosing the easing. And I'll show you this later on. I'll make an example in a while. So how do we add these keyframes? First one, you can just drag an object. The second way, obviously, is to have the timeline moved, the time script moved, and if I readjust the position, the scale, that will automatically add that key, just like when I added my image for the first time. I can also go on top of my track and I could double click on that track, and that will add a keyframe. And then in that keyframe I can choose if I wish to adjust the scale, the rotation, and everything else. And then lastly, there is another way. I can add a key by clicking on Add Key. Okay? So there's 3 ways. I can simply drag and drop something inside. That will add the initial key. I can also move the time scrub forward, and as soon as I readjust my object or the scale or anything, that will automatically add a key. I can double click on the time that time track, and that will add one key, and also I could choose to simply add a key manually with the image settings. Now if I wish to delete these, well, it's very simple. I have two options. One, I could simply select that key and then on my keyboard select the delete key, or I can go to the image settings here and I can just delete key. Okay, so very, very simple. Great. So what do we do now? Now I wish to create something. I wish to just show you how this might work. So I'm going to go here to my next slide where I have my little car, and you'll notice straight off the bat that I have three keys, 1, 2, 3. Let me move this up a bit. So A, and then it's going to B here, and then it's going back to C. All right. So how do we do this? Let me delete these so we can start from scratch. So the initial key that I have for my car tells me that at time 0, my car will have this position, this scale, this rotation, this opacity, and whatever easing I have selected. So all of these parameters can be saved into that keyframe. But notice that you cannot save the color and the shadow. Okay, later on if you want to add a color to that car or a shadow, that will not be saved in the keyframe. So let's start. I wish to move my time scrub forward to, let's say, time 2, and I will now move my car to where I wish my car to be in that time frame, time 2.0. So I'll let it go, and that added my key. So now my car will go from A to B. Great. So if I wish for my car to return to that initial position, there's two ways I can go about this. I can grab my time scrub and move it to where I want that car to be in the future, and then I can simply drag that car and bring it back. Or I can do something else. Remember that the original keyframe here already had those parameters for position. So I can copy that key. I move my time scrub forward, and then I can paste this. So on a Mac computer, I would use Command V. On a PC, I can use Control V. So I can Control C and then Control V, copy and then paste. So what happens if I play my project back? He will go from A to B, and then he will return to C. All right. So this also works for other items. Remember here we had our cheese, right? So for example, here this ice cream, this had a specific, when this appeared, this had a specific keyframe right there. That one there. I can copy that, and I can bring it to my other time frame here. I can say paste. Okay, so that position, look at my ice cream. You see it's tilted there? That position and that rotation of my ice cream will be translated to my car. Right about there. So these keyframes are transferable. You can copy them from one track or from one slide to another. All right, so that's it for this tutorial. We hope that this basic intro can give you a quick idea on some of the features that you have in the timeline on how you can create very basic animations with this. So stick around as we're going to have more advanced tutorials coming up soon. Thank you.